Okay, let's make a chunky knit peep. You'll want your chunky yarn to be chunky jumbo size 7. And that size 7, you want it to be a 25 millimeter hook, even though we're not using a hook. Make your slip knot and make these only 1 finger wide. Then you're going to chain on 9. So that slip knot is part of your 9, so that would be 1. And I'm chaining until I have 9. After you get to 9, they're all going to be 1 finger. We're going to make a circle. So here I have 9, and that last one right there is going to be the first in my next row. So take your tail end and you're going to tuck that right underneath and in that second to last loop and bring it all the way through. Then you're going to knit into the tops of those next loops that you have on there. So you're going to knit to the right, and you can kind of feel, and you can see that I'm feeling right in there for that top loop, and bring a loop through those top loops. So each one of those top loops. So you're going to end up with 8 chains on there, because that last chain in our first row was the first loop in the next row. So we'll have 8 chains. I know we chained on 9, but that last one was the last one. So you want to count. And you should have 8. So now what we're going to do is we are going to place a stitch marker right here at our last stitch. I don't place it on it because then I have to move it all the time. Just below it is totally fine. So keep going, and you're going to stitch 5 rows of 8. This last stitch right here is row 2. So your first row is the one that you pulled up from the chain. So we've completed row 2. Now we're on to row 3. And here is the last loop in row 3. Now we're on to row 4. Here's the last loop in row 4, and then we have just 1 more row. So see, I'm counting up to see where I was at. So we're doing 1 more row of 8 chains, or 8 loops, 8 knits, however you want to say it, all the way around. Okay, so there's the base of our peep. Now we're going to move on to row 6, which we're going to decrease. So you can go right over left on those next 2 stitches and pull your working yarn through to pull up just 1 loop. So you're decreasing those 2 to 1 loop. Then you're going to knit 1 and 2. And then you're going to decrease again, and you can go right over left, just like this. Decrease those to 1, and then you're going to decrease again. Decrease right over left, and push this right through, and you're on to your next row. So we should have 5 loops. You're going to stitch 5 all the way around. Okay, so that is 5, and I'm going to move my stitch marker right up here since we've decreased. Our last stitch is in a different place. Now what you're going to do is you're going to increase. Increase 1 is you go right between into that thread that's right between those 2 stitches and pull up a loop. And it's going to be a little bit smaller than the other loops. It's still a finger, but it looks a little bit smaller. And then you're going to stitch on around and you're going to stitch 5 because we did an increase and then we have 5 loops to stitch. So here's our last one, that's 5. Now what we're going to do, we should have 6 loops because of that increase. Now we're going to stitch 6. Okay, this should be coming up on our last loop here, and then we will stitch 6 again. So see, we're right above our stitch marker, and that's the last stitch. So do 6 again. Okay, so that's your 6th stitch, and so we should have 6 loops up there, and this is the base of your peep. So you can take that stitch marker off, and I'll show you where we're going to put it for the ears. Up top, there's 6 loops, so you're going to divide them into 3 and 3. So on this side, just bring those 2 together right here, so you have 3 kind of on this left side. That's going to be 1 ear. We're going to continue right here and stitch 3 to start the ear on this side. So we're kind of skipping over those other loops that we put the stitch marker on and making an ear go up by itself. You're going to stitch 3 again. And that makes your ear. So what we're going to do is cut our working yarn, leave about 6 to 8 inches of a tail here because we're going to weave it through your loops. So take your tail end and put it right through from the inside to the outside each of your loops and pull it somewhat tight, but don't lose your first loop that you have there because it could be pulled out. So pull it somewhat tight here as well. But you don't want it too tight, you don't want it pointy, you want that ear to be kind of round. And then what I do is I bring my tail end around the top of the ear and find a little loop right in here to tie a knot to. And I bring it over the top because I don't want to take it to the side or below that last loop because then your loop will be kind of floppy and it will go places. So we want to really secure that last loop too. And this tail end, we're just going to tuck it right into the ear. And it can be kind of hard because I'm trying not to push that whole tail end through the whole ear, just right to the inside of those first stitches so that it sits right inside the ear and hides. Okay, there's your first ear. Now we're going to do the second ear. So take your little stitch marker off, take your working yarn, and you're going to pull up a loop in one of these loops here that's closest to that ear. Pull up a loop, and you're going to leave a tail on there. Leave your tail at about 6 to 8 inches of yarn. I think I didn't leave enough here. But then you're going to stitch around so that you have 1, 2, 3 stitches, 3 loops that you've pulled up. And then, as I fight with my working yarn, take the tail end and you're going to tuck it into one of the loops that's right below, kind of in the crack, like right between the ears here. Because we're going to use that to tie off the hole that will be between the ears. So now you'll want to stitch 3 more to make the ear round. And try to keep your stitches as close to each other as possible as far as when you bring the working yarn to the stitch. You don't want to have a big gap because then you'll have holes. Okay, that's 3 stitches, and then we've stitched 3 more. After that last loop, that is our ear. So you're going to cut your working yarn 6 to 8 inches here, and then you're going to take that tail end and go through the next loop inside to outside. Then keep going inside to outside, and again inside to outside, and pull it somewhat tight, just like we did with the last time. And it's not super tight because you don't want to break your yarn, and you don't want that ear to be pointed. So you'll go to the other side and grab out that loop, pull it around, and knot it. And I like to knot it twice so it definitely doesn't come undone, because you never know, are you making this for a little one or not? You don't want it to come undone or have tail ends everywhere. Then you can tuck this right into the ear. You can see that it comes out the bottom. See, you'd want to put it in the ear. It's really easy to get it through the whole ear. So here is our ears. This is the tail end that we brought through when we pulled up those loops. Like I said, I should have made mine a little longer, but we're going to close this hole. So kind of like a whip stitch, we're going to take this tail end and put it around and then through both sides of this peep so that it holds it together and it doesn't have a hole at the top. I want to show you right here. This is the back of the peep because you can see those stitches going across. On the front, you don't see them going across, just so you have a reference. We're going to take that tail end across the middle again and then back through and knot it so that, and I don't have a lot of yarn here, which is why I said, you know what, maybe you should have a little bit more yarn. So I went through the back, and so it kind of pinches it together. And then I'll knot it in the back. And this one's going to be a little bit harder to knot because I don't have a lot of yarn. I could have fused some on so that I could have a little bit of extra, but have a little bit more to begin with. And then you tuck it right inside. So here is part of your peep, and then we're going to stuff it with polyfill and then close the bottom. So here we go. If you've never stuffed anything before, you'll take just a little bit of polyfill to begin with and really stuff it down in, because if you take too much at a time and try to stuff it all in, it doesn't get to where you want it to be. So it's a little easier to position your polyfill when you have a little bit at a time. And I'm not really pushing any into the ears because they're so small that that cushy yarn is probably cushiony enough. Now on the bottom, to close it off, you can use your tail end here to close it off and go from the inside to the outside around each stitch, but I really like to use a string instead. You can use a macrame string, you can use, this is actually a string used for tying together turkeys and whatnot. Honestly, you can use yarn or whatever works for you. But I like to do this, and you go from the outside to inside, just like you would with that tail end of yarn, to close this off on every single stitch. Right here, and then on that tail end, since I'm not using it, I just tuck it right inside, and then take my little string and go over top of it so it kind of stays there. And then I'll cut this string, it's like a working string, right? And then I'll tie these really tight. So just make one little loop for your knot and then pull it pull it really tight, and then you can knot it again, and that double knot will hold it really, really well. And then I cut off some extra string. And then what I do with this is I use my scissors to poke it into that middle hole that we have. Just poke it right in. And it hides it. And to my knowledge, they don't really come out. So there's your peep. Here's the back. Here's the front if you want to add some eyes on there or something, but aren't they cute?